Rejoice and be glad. Blessed are you, holy are you. Rejoice and be glad. Yours is the kingdom of God.
Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. All around the world, in cultures all around the world, the first day of November has been and is a special day of remembrance. You know, we've been doing this since about 731 A.D. Long time, Rick? A while, yeah. And then before the 700s, this day of remembrance, it was on May 13th, way back in the 300s, which was around the time when following Jesus stopped being a criminal offense punishable by death. Okay? I know Rick does not remember this. It was a long way back. But that lions and tigers and bears stuff, that was real. That gladiator stuff in the Roman Colosseum, that was real. That was what it was like for the church before the Holy Roman Empire became, that's what it was like for the church in the Roman Empire before the Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire. What year was that? About 313 AD, right? You were there but forgot the year. Yeah, because we had a different calendar back then, didn't we? Yeah. Anyway, have we been having this celebration for a long time? Yeah, we have. The old English name for this day is All Hallows Day, right? That's why we call October 31st, or at least the evening of October 31st, All Hallows Eve. Or for short, it's what? Halloween. Yeah. The gospel reading for All Saints' Day is the Beatitudes. Okay, sometimes it's from Matthew's Sermon on the Mount, sometimes it's from Luke's Sermon on the Plain, but it's always the Beatitudes. And we just sang it. It's in your bulletin too, but let me bring you the verse again. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up a mountain. He sat down, and his disciples came to him. He taught them, saying, "Happy are people who are hopeless, because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Happy are people who grieve, because they will be made glad. Happy are people who are humble, for they will inherit the earth. Happy are people who are hungry and thirsty for righteousness, because they will be fed until they're full." And again, the rest of today's gospel readings in your bulletin there. But we refer to this passage as the Beatitudes, okay? The reason for that is because in Latin, that slide is coming up in just a second here, in Latin, Beate sunt is the Beatitudes, okay? That's how we get the Beatitudes. It's blessed are they, okay? Beatitudes. Now, the Greek word behind happy or blessed is makarios. Okay? So makarios is coming up. Okay, that's the Greek word. And when the King James Bible was written back in 1611, we translated makarios as blessed. Okay? But guess what, Candy? In the 400 years since then, the English language has changed a bit. Words have changed their meaning. The words, what they meant there, don't quite mean the same to us now. So, blessed has lost some of the nuance that it had way back in 1611. So, 400 years later, in 2011, when the Common English Bible came out, and then that's the Bible that we use here now, okay, makarios was translated as happy. Okay? Now, happy is not my favorite word for this translation, okay? But guess what? They didn't call me and ask me when they were coming up with the Bible, okay? Even though I probably know some of the people that worked on it, I was not on the Rolodex. You remember what a Rolodex is? I was not on their list, okay? But I, on the other hand, also like happy, because it's not blessed. We don't throw it away like we did blessed, okay? And happy kind of hints at the richness that was originally behind this word blessed. Because the problem that we have today is that we don't have a good English word for makarios, okay? If we could make up a word that means all at the same time, blessed and happy and rich and fortunate, well, we'd come a bit closer. So let's today call it supremely fortunate, okay? So hear the passage with this word. Supremely fortunate are people who are hopeless. Supremely fortunate are people who grieve. Supremely fortunate are people who are humble. Supremely fortunate are people who are hungry and thirsty for righteousness. Now, at first blush, that makes no sense, right? It makes no sense until you remember that Jesus, at this point, is teaching his 12 disciples. The 12 disciples who've just pulled away from the crowd that now is down below them on that mountain. Okay? So Jesus and this small group of 12 disciples, he's telling these 12 guys that they were receiving a wonderful, life-changing, perspective-shifting treasure. Yeah. Because you know what? Jesus is telling them that they have Jesus. Okay? And when you have Jesus in your heart filling you, you are supremely fortunate. Yeah. Supremely fortunate and happy and blessed and rich in things that aren't money and fortunate in ways that defy circumstances. So you're starting to see why we're hearing the Beatitudes on All Saints' Day? Okay? These loved ones who have died, okay, who've passed away, who've passed on from this life to eternal glory, they are now with Jesus. They are now clothed with the glory of Christ. Remember the funeral services? We say that at the beginning. They're clothed in the glory of Christ. And they are now in the joy of God's home, not made with hands, but eternal in the heavens. You know, maybe some of you remember me at a funeral, okay, imagining your loved one at the moment when they take their final breath, okay? Remember me imagining that way? And that point where they began to experience the glory that was about to reveal to them? That's sometimes one of my favorite parts about the sermon, okay? So special, because this threshold, which is between life here on earth and the glory in heaven, it's a holy moment. Holy because there is that glimpse of an indescribable holy place. So we remember our loved ones today. We honor our loved ones today. We even miss our loved ones today, right? Yeah. But we also celebrate that they are in glory with Jesus. Great thoughts, right? Yeah. Rick says, yeah, great thoughts, preacher. But you know what? We're not in heaven. Are we in heaven right now? Say no. No. We're living in this less than heavenly reality. And we have to deal with all this stuff on earth right now that we're dealing with. So, what's in the Beatitudes for us who are still living? What? Well, to use Eugene Peterson's words from the Message translation of the Bible, for us here, we might feel like we're at the end of our rope. Anybody ever felt like you're on the rope this last month or so? Yeah. We might feel like we've lost what is most dear to us. Okay? Not just the death of a loved one, but maybe we've lost something else. There are still people who hunger and thirst for righteousness, right? Yeah. If you don't believe me, hand me a newspaper and I'll start pointing out articles. Okay? There are people who still are persecuted and harassed and insulted and lied about. So what's in the Beatitudes for those of us who are still living? You know what? What's in it? Hope. Remember, like the 12 disciples, we have Jesus in our heart. Okay? Now you can murmur amen to that one, okay? Like the 12 disciples, we have Jesus in our heart. Yeah? Yes. And having Jesus in our heart, this can be a wonderful, life-changing, perspective-shifting treasure. And here's one way that we can live out the Beatitudes in challenging times. Okay? If you've been here for any length of time, some of you know that I've mentioned the Stockdale paradox here before. Okay? To bring you up to speed, James Stockdale was a U.S. Navy vice admiral. Okay? He was a prisoner of war for 7 years and was held in Hanoi, North Vietnam. Okay? Some of you might remember him because he was Ross Perot. Remember Ross Perot? He was Ross Perot's vice presidential candidate in 1992. That dates me because I remember this guy. Okay? James Stockdale. Stockdale survived the infamous Hanoi Hilton prison, POW camp. Okay? He survived as he watched so many of his fellow service personnel just after a while give up and literally die. So as he watched that happen, he was determined to live. And he came up with what's now known as the Stockdale paradox. Okay? So here it is. At the same time, you need to hold on to two opposite things. Okay? One, you have to have faith that we will prevail. That's one hand. But on the other hand, we need to be honest about the brutal facts of our current reality. So we need to have faith and be honest about our current reality. Hold on to both at the same time. Because life on earth is not the same as it is in heaven, right? Someone say no. No, it's not. Yet, at the same time, we can know where we're headed, okay? We can know that we will prevail even though we find ourselves in most difficult times. The Stockdale paradox. That new spin on the Beatitudes, okay? And, speaking of spins, United Methodists, we love putting our spin on things. We have a spin on this too. I don't know if these words mean anything or if you remember them. Sometimes we say, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Is that thing? Yeah. And we believe as United Methodists that the disciples that we make for Jesus Christ will go on to accomplish the transformation of the world. Okay? Matter of fact, that's our mission, right? And we've learned when we get into these Wesleyan practices that we change individual lives through our acts of compassion, and we also change the world systemically through our acts of justice. Okay? So we can begin to see that even in the toughest days, even in the most difficult times, by the grace of Jesus Christ, we are happy. Even in the tough times, we are blessed. We are supremely fortunate, and we don't give up. Jesus makes a difference in our lives. Kind of like, in a dimly lit way, all the saints of glory. Yep, candle's still on in that lantern. Think of yourself as a jack-o'-lantern, okay? The happy ones, not the scary ones, okay? The light of Christ is in us. So let's go back to our text from Revelation, okay? John, the guy who wrote it, he was in prison in the island of Patmos, and he was trying to describe this dream, this vision, this revelation that was indescribable, okay? So partway through it, he writes this. He says, I looked, and there was a great crowd that no one could number. They were from every nation, tribe, people, and language. They were standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They wore white robes and held palm branches in their hands. They cried out with a loud voice, "Victory belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." Now, did you catch that at the beginning of today's service? All the saints, dressed in white, are singing. They're almost shouting a victory song. Alleluia, right? Alleluia. Now just remember that John had this vision while those who followed Jesus Christ were still being killed in the Roman Colosseum. In the midst of this, he has this vision, this revelation. And then he writes, we just heard it, that those who have been killed in these great hardships, they are now singing in victory at the top of their voices. Amen? Should send shivers up and down your spine. And in the centuries since then, so many additional saints have joined in to the song. And today, as we worship, we join with them in Holy Communion. All of these saints who are with us in a special way. So may we live our lives anticipating the time when we will join their unending hymn. Let's turn to God in prayer.